Hi. All right, yes, we got folks jumping in. Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Audio's been funny here lately.
Hey.
Oh, by the way, when I see you, you have something waiting for you.
I got some. Wait.
Hold on, let me show you. These earrings.
Oh my goodness. Those are gorgeous. Look at you coming through with the that's one thing. Michael's good for a good accessory.
Listen, and I believe that everybody should accessorize.
Yes, Michael is good for a good accessory. So
I,
I know I started this live a little late. I see a lot of people popping in though, so welcome. I've only gone live a few times, y'all. Um, so yeah, like I just be still figuring it out as I go along. But I saw that a lot of people were really interested in this topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. Which is we're going to be talking about being African American practitioners of Lucumi. Because it's something I've been wanting to talk about for a while. Oh my goodness, that's my goddaughter. My goddaughter, she every time she comes over here. Somebody's at the door. Okay, baby, daddy's gonna go get it. Don't be in my business. That's Nugget.
yo, that's like, hey, Chris, Santo, Lorong Bell.
But no, my goddaughter, she every time she comes here, she leaves something. I swear. I'm convinced she's a child of Elegua. Like it's always something getting lost, something she leaving something. It's so she came over to drop off some stuff I need for tomorrow and left her wallet. So that's her at the door. But anyways, yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this topic because I feel like it's something that needs to be talked about. What it means to be African American in Lucumi, in this practice. I want to talk about a lot of myths, dispel some myths, dispel some assumptions, and just really kind of like amplify our voices and share our experiences, right? So, there's a lot of you on here that are familiar with me, but for those who are not, my name is Latoya Thurman. Some of you know me as Crystal's son. I'm initiated in Lucumi as a priest of Yemaya. It'll be 5 years this year, so I'm still very much a baby, very, very, very much a baby. So I only have 5 years in Santo. And yeah, so that's me. Um, I would like my wonderful guest, my beloved elder, to introduce himself.
Well, my name is Michael, and of course, my religious name is Oshun Moyua, Crown to Oshun. It is now 12 years. So,
Yes, yes.
like, time has definitely drawn on. I was initiated in Matanzas, Cuba to Oshun. My father is Obaluaye. And I'm initiated as a Lucumi priest, but of course, I'm also initiated into other ATRs. So
Yes.
just, yeah.
Yes.
And I love being a part of this tradition, and I just have nothing but love for the history and, and what we've gotten to preserve. So, like, I love being, me in this tradition and being welcome the way I am. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's actually funny because when I was my husband when he was asking about the live and the topic, I told him the topic and then he was like, I told him I was going on with you and he was like he asked if you were Cuban. He didn't know. He did not know that you're black. I'm like, no, Michael's black. Like he's blackity black black. Like raised in the church black. Like he was like, oh, okay.
it just so happens that I'm a bit of a polyglot in my own right. So,
Right.
no, like, I love language, and I think that that's one of the things that actually, like, just enthralls me about being a part of this tradition. It's just like the exploration of history and language that I love.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, me and Michael, like when we get on conversation, we get to cutting up. Like we're both ADHD, we're both nerds, like we're both like historians, like we're both, wordsmiths. So, I have a list of talking points and things that I want us to cover. But also, if you guys have any questions, definitely drop them in the chat because I really do want to answer any questions that you guys have. And of course, like, share this live. And yeah, so my first question to you, Michael, is what brought you to Ocha? Like, what was your journey with this practice?
So, when I was about 17, um, I dated someone who was in the tradition, and I was exposed to it that way. And I fell in love with it. And I just went on sort of a journey over the years, informing myself about it. And I, met people in the tradition. I'd been a part of the tradition. Like by the time I was 18, I found someone to sort of tend to me or what have you. And then eventually just time passed. And now, well, in 2013, I ended up initiating in Cuba,
Hmm.
in Matanzas, Cuba. And and I thought it was beautiful because I got to see the tradition at its root, and that just sort of captivated me forever. Um, like I got to actually touch and see like artifacts in our tradition. So
Hmm.
it definitely, yeah, definitely. I came seeking just guidance because I was tired of the this sort of one world church understanding that not everybody has the same experience and faith under Christianity, and it just wasn't working for me. It just
Hmm.
didn't speak to me that in that way. And I literally, I learned songs and stuff like that in the Lucumi tradition as a teenager coming along, and then eventually like things came together, and I've done things that I never thought that I would achieve, like like singing in the tradition and like teaching people history, translating names, all of these things. So like I came to this tradition just because I wanted an experience that was unique to me. Um, and I also wanted community, which is something that, I felt like I was lacking in a way. And there were definitely more reasons like emotional, health-wise, things like that. And I'm just glad that I made it.
Absolutely. That's beautiful, beautiful testimony. And it's funny you mentioned the health thing because, you know, now you kind of see a lot of people just kind of initiating just to initiate, but a lot of us, initiate to save our life, like literally,
Hmm.
my experience is different as far as what brought me to Ocha. Like it was more so just me connecting with my ancestors. So I'd always been, well, grew up Christian, but as most of us, Black folks do, grow up some form of Christian. But I had always been curious. I had always, been into exploring other spiritualities. So, of course, like when I got to college, I got out of my mother's home. I started, dabbling with tarot cards and, like the eclectic witch stuff, and then, a few years after that, as I graduated college, I started questioning Christianity. Well, I had always questioned Christianity, but it when you get in higher education, it really kind of sparks your critical thinking, right? Like it.
No, my grandfather did it to me. My grandfather was a theologian, so you already know.
Yes. And I took quite a few religious studies courses, and and I was already a skeptic, right? So, I took those religious studies courses, and then it really just had my mind blown. So by the time I graduated college, I just was like, same thing. Christianity, it never resonated for me. Even growing up in church, and I'm seeing everybody in church running around speaking in tongues and catching the Holy Ghost, and I'm a kid looking around like I don't feel any of this. So it got, it was more evident as I got older. And then my transition was going out of Christianity into Buddhism. So that's actually what started my whole, like spiritual journey, was getting into Buddhism. And Buddhism still is my foundational practice. And then from there, I just did a lot of that for several years. But it wasn't until I moved from Vegas to Atlanta where things kind of shifted for me. And so at this point, I had not ever been exposed to any ATR. because in California at the time, it wasn't really a thing that was accessible. It wasn't like out there. So I was not, had no experience, no exposure to any type of ATR, let alone Orisha. But when I got to Atlanta, I started, I met someone who had, and I speak about this a lot, but I met someone who was into ancestor veneration. And when I went to visit him, he had this beautiful ancestor altar, and that drew me in. So I asked him to teach me, about that practice, and that's actually what I started with. That's kind of what started my whole ATR journey, because I started doing ancestor veneration, did that for like a year, and then I started having dreams. And I started dreaming about just things I didn't understand, villages, me wearing necklaces with color, beaded necklaces with colors, like just, dreaming about ceremonies that I didn't know anything about. And everyone who knows me knows I'm a dreamer. Like, that's my gift. And so essentially that was my ancestors talking to me. As I'm on this ancestral veneration practice, my ancestors are like, okay, well, let me show you some things. And it wasn't, it got to a point where I was like, I know that this is telling me something, but I don't understand what I'm being told. So, my god, who's now one of my god sisters at the time, she was like, well, I think I need to get you with my godfather for a reading. And so, when I went to visit Vegas, she brought me to, who's now my godfather. And I got that very first reading, and that started it all for me. And for me, it was just crazy, because it was like, I didn't know what to expect. Like, my god sister was like, come to my elders. I show up. It's this house, very unassuming. I'm thinking it's gonna be like skulls and bones, and and I go. There's this, like, this handsome little Mexican dude who's like, "Welcome, have a seat."
Yo.
I'm like, okay. And so he pulls me back into the room to read me, and all this man got was my name and my date of birth, and he read me for filth. Like, I was in that chair crying by the end of that reading, like, and he knew things about me that I don't talk, like, I knew it was real, because he said things in that reading that I don't even talk about. You know what I'm saying? And then at the end of all that, he's like, you got to do Ebo, and you need to receive a lake gaze before you go back to Atlanta. And I'm like, my flight leaves tomorrow. Like, what do you mean? And I don't know you, and I don't know nothing about this, and I don't know this Elay. Like, what is the Elay? Like, I knew it was real, but the commitment was not there at the time. I was like, I don't just jump into stuff. I need to learn what this is about. Like, this is my first exposure to this. Like, what do you mean? And so, but I did my Ebo. I went back to to Atlanta. And then that's what started me reading books, learning more, and about Orisha, about the practice. And it was a good year before I actually received a late gaze. I didn't just jump into it, but my approach was, I did a lot to try to understand what this practice was, and then getting into, like, developing relationships, like getting to know these spirits that I'm supposed to be connecting with. So that's what brought me to Ocha. And essentially it was like, you got a crown, and like, it took me forever to get my lake A's, and then I got them, and then from there it just went so fast. Then I'm getting
Yep.
warriors, and I'm getting Olokun, then I'm getting Ibeyi, and then next thing I know, like, I'm having a crown. But I'm gonna tell y'all, like, I fought that. Like, Abatala had to literally pick me up and sit my ass on the throne to get me to crown, because I was not trying to crown. I'm serious.
So that something similar happened to me. Like, Oshun basically gave me two choices. She was like, "You're gonna get sick either way. The health problems are coming.
Yeah.
You can either get sick without me and die in a hospital, or you can do
Wow.
Osha."
Right.
And I promise you, it's crazy that like literally after I finished crowning and everything was done and I came back to the States, literally not a month later, I was in the hospital. And that was
Right.
when and that was like, I think right after I finished my year, they ended up diagnosing me with Crohn's disease.
Wow.
She knew it was coming. And I can never, I'm too grateful at this point because I'm still here to tell the tale 12 years later. So, you know,
Wow.
by the way, why do we look like the two waters?
You know
It,
what?
in reverse, in reverse is like,
And then somebody else was in the comments and they were like, I love the colors. Now, let me tell y'all, even, yes, I'm crowned to Yemaya. Shango was my father and Ocha, but I love me some yellow. Like, yellow has always been my favorite color. It has always been my go to. I know I'm wearing I got you and Oshun's Aleke today. That's what I've been on today. But
right now I
yes.
just got on Ayel soon because I need her to draw Ayel wall.
That's so funny. Yeah, I was reading the comments. Someone's like, I love the colors. Thank you. Hey baby. Yes. Dad, I'm gonna go get my shoes. Okay, go talk to daddy about that. Don't be nosy. I see you being nosy. All right. Give me a kiss. Ooh. Hey baby. I need you to go. Privacy, please.
That is
Teach.
one of he is one of my favorite Scorpios. I just want you to know that.
Eric, go. Go. Close the door. Okay. Go talk to daddy about that. I got a 3-year old who's a Scorpio and a child of Oshun. So
I mean, he's gonna be great though.
yeah, but he runs circles around me. I'm like, Lord.
Oh
But
man.
yeah, so I did finally crown in 2021 in Vegas, with my elder. And I was the last of the, we call them the pandemic Iawos. So there was a whole group of us, and you remember because I know you worked a lot. You were at a lot of those ceremonies.
Yes, goodness.
So I think the last one he crowned that year, that pandemic year, I crowned November, the day after Thanksgiving, November 26th, 2020. Yeah, 2021. Yep.
And then the next time I saw you, you were out
No,
to here.
2020. It was 2020.
And
Because
then
I
after
had
that,
the baby. I was pregnant in my year.
yeah, because the next time I
Yes.
saw you, you was out to here about to pop.
Yes, I was doing I think my year at Bo and had just had the baby. Like, so yes, so that's what brought me to Ocha. So the elder said my crowning started the pandemic. I got done 6 months before quarantine. Yeah, it was a lot of us that year in my elder's house. And I was the last one that he crowned
Not
during the pandemic year. Yeah.
not gonna lie, it was hard working ceremony during the pandemic. It
Yeah, it
really was.
was. Yeah, it was. Um, did you experience like a culture shock, being like African American and then being brought into this, it's because Lucumi is an Afro-Cuban practice. Um, was it a culture shock for you?
To be quite honest, no, because I'm a Floridian by origin. So like I spent a lot of time, in that community. But and the thing of it is it wasn't a culture shock, and I was already fluent in Spanish and Portuguese, so
Right.
I didn't have much of a culture shock to take on, to deal with in that moment. Um, the only thing that was, I'd say an adjustment was, sort of what almost became my eldest mantra in my direction was, believing in myself, which is something that
Mhm.
took time. So,
Right.
but because I had to learn to believe that I belong.
Hmm.
And that's something that I learned when I studied about Ori and understanding that destiny is what chose this for me. So, and what's even more interesting is that like when I crowned, when they were giving Obi at a particular point dealing with ancestors, I won't go in too deep, But my great grandmother stopped everything until her name got mentioned.
Hmm.
And it was just like that was the wake up call. Okay, so this is truly for me. This is because I went in sort of blind facing it.
Right. No, that's beautiful what you say about the role that the ancestors play in this for us, because I had a similar experience where well, first of all, my egun are all up in my ita, like to the point where it's like they're first, you know what I mean? Like, so
Same
that,
here.
so there was that. But my great grandmother, my mother's grandmother showed up, at some point in ceremony, was mentioned, and it was mentioned just how happy she was that I was, taking this step and doing this initiation, and just overall how all of my ancestors were happy that I was reintroducing this back into the bloodline, this practice that had been
Same
lost.
here.
So
But
yeah, that's a big aspect. And even for me, I agree that it wasn't a culture shock for me. Well, it was in a little bit, but not in the way, in a bad way. For me, the culture shock was the amount of community, like how communal this practice is. Like that was the culture shock for me, and it was a pleasant surprise, and it's interesting to me because like a lot of people, they don't like these, a lot of people stray away from these practices because of the structure and because of the community and having elders. But I think that that's the part that makes it so beautiful.
mm,
There's only so far we can go on our own before we need community. And I know for me, like I've grown spiritually, like expeditiously, having a community, having elders I can call, having, not having to do ceremonies on my own or workings on my own, and etc. Or just when I need support, like, when I was pregnant and I was in labor with my son, I birthed at home, and I was in labor for 24 hours, and just consistent contractions, but I was not, to the point where I could, was ready to actually deliver. And it got to a point where it was just, I was exhausted and it was a lot. And I called Padrino and was like, I don't know, light a candle, something for me, because this is too much. And then he ended up, he's like, I'll let Madrina know, my Ubona, which I think she's on this live. Blanca, I think I see her on this live. And I'm sorry, I accidentally sent an invitation to someone. I did not mean to do that. I was pushing, trying to go through. But so if you got an invitation to join the live, just ignore that. That was not intentional. But I was trying to scroll through because I think I did
hey, light ball.
I did see
That's my boo.
Blanca on here in the comments. But yeah, that's my Ubona. And so my elder, my padrino, let her know that I was in labor, and I don't know what she did. She did something with Oshun because she's, crowned to Oshun. And I just know a few hours later I was pushing. I was delivering. And I have another god sibling who I also called and was like, I need, prayer, I need, support. This is a lot. So even just things like that, just the support that you receive, like not just in your spiritual, like your journey as, a Lucumi practitioner, but also just support within your day-to-day life. There's plenty of times where I get on the phone and I call Michael so he can talk me off the ledge, like
That is my life. Look, I literally have it in time that to paraphrase that I'm a bit of the I'm kind of like a Yemaya child whisperer.
yes, like there have been, so especially my first few years initiated, like my year, and then that like two, about three, up to about 3 years, there was a lot of conversations with Michael where I was like, look, this is a lot. I need, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, so it's that support. So that's the thing, like, that I appreciate about this practice. So
Yeah, it definitely. gave me a sense of community because like I have closeness with some family members, but of course, definitely not all. And I never really felt like, family for me was this tight unit. But I experienced that in my own religious community, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So it definitely helped to bring balance to that situation for me, just having community. Being
Absolutely.
because you talked me off the ledge just the same. Let's not because us water babies, you already know when the water gets to moving,
And then we
oh
feeling all the things, and I be ready to just set it all on fire. Like that's my answer. Just like, let's just flip all these tables. Like yes, we are emotional beings. Like and I'm like just, I'm so quick to just be like, fuck it. I'm just about to destroy all this shit. But this practice has refined me. This
yes,
practice has refined me a lot.
yes, it has.
So this is a big question I want to ask because this comes up a
Mhm.
lot. Why Lucumi and not Isheshe? Let's talk about that.
Okay, like so for me, don't get me wrong. I'm all about a little Sankofa energy. You understand? Go back and get it, do your thing. But when I initially sought out ATRs, I made it clear to myself that, I want to make sure that it's truly for me. And though I'm of African descendancy, I am diasporic, right? And the way that I live, the way that I move, it works for me. It works for me in the world that I live in and who I am and where I come from because I didn't want to like get so caught up to the point where I forgot or just, ignored what we created as a people here and the culture and the spiritual existence that we already have. If anything, initiating into the Lucumi tradition further tied me to that in a sense. It sent me back and said, hey, go look at that because it's important. So yeah, I chose it because it was truly for me. Don't get me wrong, I'm open to like Isheshe ceremonies and things like that. I have I've even been present for Isheshe rites and things like that. So like I'm totally open to like receiving different things, but the Lukumi tradition really like works for the way that I live and operate on a day-to-day basis, and it works for who I am. It's like it says in Yobe, Oriele da mio, ori mi be mio. Like my ori has to carry me where I need to be,
Hmm.
and I trusted it, and it just worked for me. And the longer I've been in the tradition, the more that I see the importance of preservation and finding out where certain things came from to further solidify that. So it worked out for me, to be honest with you.
Right.
And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
Right. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. That is, I mean, that is my experience as well. I mean, for me, Isheshe just never came up. You know, because again, I started this whole journey with my ancestor veneration practice. My ancestor veneration practice is what kicked all this off.
Mhm.
And at that point, they were the ones guiding me, and they didn't guide me to a Shay. Now, nothing against Shay. Um, but also at the same time, I also have a lot of ancestry that has come out of the Caribbean. You
Mhm.
know,
Same here.
even in my spiritismo, I have spirits with me that I've inherited from the Caribbean. From Trinidad, Barbados, and Grenada, and like so that's very very prevalent within just like my ancestry, my spiritual court, and it makes sense considering the history and the flow of the slave trade. A lot of people
Mhm.
forget that with the transatlantic slave trade, Africans were brought to the Caribbean first and then from the Caribbean brought to the States. It was very rare, if ever, that boats went straight from Africa to the United States because the Caribbean served as a ground to kind of break the slaves in. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of those Caribbean colonies were established first. Um, and
Actually,
so
there's a colony of African American people, a town of African American people that migrated to what was it, to the Dominican Republic. So you got a bunch of Johnsons and Wilsons and
Talk about it.
Jacksons.
Talk about it. You know,
That
and the reason why I bring this up is because, and I don't know how much you experience this here, like where you're at, but in Atlanta, Isheshe is a big thing, and people are always like, you know, especially the E5, the Isheshe practitioners, or they kind of are like, well, why Lucumi? Why Lucumi? You know, you need to go to the original. You know, they kind of talk down on us a bit here. In Atlanta for not being Isheshe practitioners. And it's just like, it's just not something that is coming up within my ancestral, you know, I don't know, cipher, I guess, is a lack of a better word. And also, anything in regarding that would have been addressed in my Ita. You know what I'm saying? And there, you know, when I got crowned in my Ita, there was one little thing that I need to do with Isheshe, and that's it. But that's the only time it was brought up, you know. So a lot of African Americans, you know, forget that a lot of us have way more ties to the Caribbean than we think we do or that we consider, you know. And it also, I think that mindset kind of gives it doesn't give enough credit to our ancestors. It doesn't give enough credit to consider that our ancestors were able to, you know, thoroughly preserve these African traditions in the diaspora by just assuming that it's tainted and it's diluted because it's coming out of Cuba, you
yeah,
know?
there's this assumption that the tradition in and of itself is Christianized, right? What they don't understand is that Catholic imagery is a personal choice. It is a personal endeavor, and it has nothing to do with ceremony. Like you're not going to see a picture of Saint Barbara in the middle of a sacrifice. It's just not. That's not what we do. Some people did adopt that, and some people did carry it on for a few generations, but that's a part of their personal worship. And there's nothing obligating you to do that. And I think that a lot of the communities in like Atlanta and in the Carolinas have made sort of a broad stroke assumption about what we actually do believe and practice without getting to know the fact that like the progenitors of this faith, that the Lucumi tradition, were African women.
Hmm.
Like Mama Serrato Obatero was given a Christian name, but Obatero didn't speak Spanish that well. She was an Egbado woman who had to learn to operate in that. But she was a native speaker of Yoruba, specifically a dialect spoken in her hometown of Egbado. So like I think that they just don't give enough credit to the Africans that preserved what we still have today. And until those misunderstandings are cleared up, you're going to get a lot of people making sort of these assumptions that, oh, they're diluted. But we also forget that the British didn't leave Nigeria until the 1960s.
Talk about it.
Okay. They sat in your living room just like they sat in ours.
Talk
And what
about
people
it.
for and what people forget is that there are Yoruba names that have been Christianized. They added things like Jesu for Jesus, Oluwa, adding a WA to Olu for the Lord, because Olu was originally a reference to my father, Obaluaye.
Talk about it.
So like, they were colonized. They were one of the sources from which they were getting people. So like, I think there are just a lot of people that have these misconceptions about us because I've met Isheshe people on and off the continent who love the fact that we preserve what we preserve,
Right.
right?
Right.
And they celebrate us in doing so. I've seen Isheshe people come to our ceremonies, come to our drummings, and worship with us without problem. There was a young lady that I met. She has Yemaya done Isheshe. Her Yemaya came in a drumming, and the only person she would have interpret for her was me.
Right. So there's some other like David Sosa mentioned, which by the way, hey David, it's good to see you on here. But he made a comment too that we were all affected with the colonization, not just in the diaspora, you know. So to treat it like it's just, you know, unique to to Cuba, it's like no, the colonization happened, everywhere in the motherland as
But
well.
what I don't understand is like why they make those assumptions about the those assumptions about the Lucumi tradition, but they never make the same assumptions about Candomblé because they are equally diasporic.
Very much so. Very
So
much so.
so like that be the that's I just think that it's sort of it's rather convenient to point the finger at one diasporic tradition and call it diluted. There was a young man that came to me for some spiritual assistance, and he told me, I was considering, being a part of this tradition, but it's a little too it's a little too Cuban for me. I didn't dig any deeper. I said, okay, no problem. You do what's best for you. That baby went and initiated into Haitian voodoo. And when he called me to tell me, I was like, I'm happy for you that you found your path. Quick question. How do you like the Catholic imagery you have? Okay. Like, I mean, we sing in Yoruba. Matter of fact, there have been Yoruba scholars that have watched our drummings videos and come and actually started interpreting our songs. There's a lady
Yeah,
that does it on YouTube that
yeah,
literally sits and interprets Lucumi songs, and she's Yoruba. So it's just like there needs to come a point where people stop making these assumptions about like the purity. Like there's no such thing as this whole purity understanding. Like you're either worshiping Orisha or you're not.
that part. That part. David made a good point. He said that people want to not recognize the African influence. They think Lucumi is purely Latin. You know, yeah. you
Until you
know,
go to a drumming.
until you
That's
go
when you
to a
know,
drumming.
and then you know how African it is.
Right, because I mean, because I have some, dealings with or some practice with Haitian voodoo, and I've been to some drummings where some of the drumming rhythms are get real similar to those Haitian voodoo, those fet, what they play in the fets, those types of cadences and those drum patterns, So it's like don't get it twisted like that. That it's there.
but
It's
but
very much
also but
there.
also I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that there are many African Americans who naturally feel ostracized because of an assumed language barrier.
Mm,
Um, and that also sometimes motivates their opinions of the tradition, you
right,
know.
right,
And some of them, like, you know, they literally out and out say it. I went here and I just didn't feel comfortable. I didn't really understand everybody, so I just kind of backed off,
right.
you know.
Speaking of, let's segue into that because that was one of the talking points I wanted to address, the language barrier. Because I get, I agree, and I've heard that a lot of excuses as to why a lot of African Americans don't want to practice Lakumi is, because of the language barrier. But then it's like if you go to the Shay, it's they're speaking your like it's still a language barrier. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like, do you feel like there is a language barrier? And if so, like, how do you handle that? Like, what is your advice? What are your thoughts on that?
So in my particular case, I'm a little privileged because I was already fluent. Like I was already a polyglot in the language nerd by the time I came to it. So there wasn't a difficulty in me understanding, and I think that it opened doors for me to meet other people in the tradition. But my elders are bilingual, so
Mhm.
either way, I wouldn't have had a problem. So I didn't have that experience in terms of like there being a language barrier or what have you. And um, but I do know other people that have, and it's just like the best that I can tell them is that you don't speak Yoruba either, but you're going to learn it, right? I don't obligate my godchildren to learn Spanish because why? Like if you want to, like Spanish is not a requisite for this tradition. You can learn Yoruba, you can speak in Yoruba, you can speak in English here because your elder speaks English, so that's fine. But I never lived it, but I've seen other people who have lived it, and it is a deterrent for some.
Mhm.
It is a deterrent, and it basically because like, and rightfully so because of the fact that like you want your elder to understand you, or you want to be able to understand them because this is a person that you've got to get to know,
Right.
you know, before you actually commit. Because once you initiate, that's it, boo. Your obligations are your obligations for life.
Right.
And
Whether you speak the language or not.
right. So like I try to tell folks like, listen, it's a okay if you speak English. And I do my best to find ways to make things more comfortable. If you can't say bendición, I try to find a sort of a more African approach to it for you to get your thing in, or you could just ask for the blessing in English. I'm okay with that. As long as when you go to Moyuba, you know your words.
Right. Right.
When you sing these songs, sing in the language that it was written.
Right. And that's such a good point. And for me, I'm the opposite because I'm not fluent. I mean, I grew up in California. I used to be more fluent with Spanish while living in California, and then a little bit in Vegas, but I haven't lived in either place in like 10 plus years, so I've lost a lot of that fluency. But I at least will try. I will try. I do understand it better than I can speak it. But then it depends on your setting because my background is Mexican Spanish. That's very different from Puerto Rican Spanish, from Cuban Spanish, from Dominican Spanish. So there's the dialects and the different accents and things like that. But that's language, though. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like, I mean, English is the same way. When I went down to New Orleans, that accent was different than the Atlanta accent, than the North Carolina accent. Like, that's just what that is, right?
Mhm.
Um, but to me personally, I feel like the language, using that is kind of an excuse because if you really want to learn something, you're going to learn something.
But you're gonna learn it,
You're going to
period.
learn it. I also train capoeira, and everything that we sing in capoeira is in Portuguese, in Brazilian Portuguese. I've had to pick that up in order to be able to train and play capoeira and, you know, sing the songs and things like that. Like, because that's something that people don't understand. Like, you know, these practices that are very African in nature, it's all about call and response. It's all about singing the songs. It's all about, so yeah, so a lot of the similar things in capoeira are similar to what, is expected within, being in an ATR, learning the language, learning the songs, learning, things like that. So for me, I don't know. I just feel like if you want to be a part of something and there's, a difference of culture, you just learn the culture and you respect the culture. I think that's kind of simple. I feel like that's just, common sense and respect. As harsh as that may come off, but you know, um, I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy. But it does get easy over time. Like for example, I try to make my Adi moves for my Orishas like every once a week. I designate days to cook for them, and as I cook for them, I just play Orisha songs on YouTube. And I'm learning over the last year or so of doing that. I'm learning more words. Like I'm picking up more, not just learning the songs, but I'm starting to recognize words and recognize what they mean. And,
Mhm.
I'm starting to understand like the, the, uh, just like with the meaning of the songs and, etc. So, and that's just for me listening while I cook, so it really could be that simple.
Yeah.
But I agree, like you don't need to learn Spanish because I mean, at the most, if you're in a Latin house, most of the people there are going to speak Spanish, but you know, at our house, our elder will speak English too. Like when he comes to Atlanta, and we're in ceremony, but all our black asses, you know, he's gonna speak English in order to be able to communicate with us. So I feel like it's more about learning how to interact and work with people versus it being about a language thing. Does that make sense?
Right. And I also wanted to kind of just basically pinpoint this. What we're talking about is just that sort of this base understanding that language is the barrier, not people sort of using language to sort of whittle down their traumas to sort of that. I noticed that Jack hit that point in the comments, and that I want to be clear. We're not negating anybody's existing traumas because there are real traumas that people have experienced. I'm not sitting here like, you know, dismissing that. We're just talking about like the people that, that really is their reason. And if a language barrier is going to be sort of the end all be all for you, the deal breaker, then there are a lot of traditions you won't be able to participate in.
Mm.
Because if you go to learn about Hinduism, you're gonna have to learn a little something. Not even gonna hold you because most of their holy books are written
How are you
in
gonna do those pujas? How are you gonna sit in them temples? How are you gonna do the mantras? You know, like and I love that you brought up Hinduism because I am a devotee of Kali Ma, and I can't do her prayers in English. I gotta do her mantras in you know in the given language. You know what I'm saying? And so no, that's a good point. You know, let me go in the comments. Comment about what they may have said when somebody. Okay, I surprised my Oba when I saw with him at my after my year in white. To be, she stayed calling me. That might be a whole separate live that I might do just about calling Ma, being an African American devotee of calling Ma. But no, let me tell you, I'm gonna sidebar that. You know how I mentioned my ancestry and my ancestors being from the Caribbean. Kalima, she's a spirit, a deity that's in my spiritual court. It came up in a misa. And I inherited her from my father's side coming out of Trinidad and Barbados. Because a lot of people forget that there's a whole culture of people from India that migrated there and mixed those cultures in the Caribbean, you know.
like the Sadus. The Sadus in Trinidad. Maybe.
You know, so
Maybe that's
yeah, she came up because out of that, you know, even though someone said that she calls to them, you know, I've always been into Hinduism and going into the temples and doing the mantras, and that came along with me in the meditation. But no, that's how I got Kali Ma in my court. I inherited her ancestrally. So that's a real thing. That's a real thing, you know. Um, I'm going to Michael, if you don't mind, if you mind kind of going in the comments and kind of maybe answering some questions. I'm gonna go get my son real quick because I need to get him settled. So give me about
okie dokie.
I'll be right back.
See, I think it's our job as people for in traditions. Agree. I, and Jack, I agree with you strongly there because my belief is that I serve as a representative of this faith to the people who are seeking it. In a sense that, like, one of my major responsibilities is to encourage their faith along their journey, and I can't do that if I'm in any way like shunning or ostracizing or basically making someone feel like the odd man out, you know. And we absolutely need people to be more sensitive because African Americans have been present in this tradition, and we are a part of its history at this point. So, you know, like it, I agree with you strongly there. Yeah, if a person, you're right, Jack. If a person is made to feel like there's a barrier between them and access to this community and being able to participate actively in it and feel like you belong, you know, it's definitely detrimental to our faith, which is one of the things that I'm definitely trying to change with my own children, making sure that they understand that they belong, um, and that this faith is a part of them as well. You know, I've been missing you too, Amy. I'll have to call y'all when I get off the live. Oh, hey, David, thank you for coming, and you too, Jack, and everybody I'm seeing.
All right, I'm back. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm over here trying to mom and be on live and so Oh, and Bendición, Amy, how I didn't even know you were on here. I didn't even know you was on TikTok.
Right?
We got a lot of God family on this live. This is great. This is amazing. So what did I
Oh,
miss?
no, I was just like reading comments and just sort of like chiming in, and because like Jack was making some real points in the comments, like definitely understanding that like we definitely as a tradition as a whole, we definitely could be more sensitive to and more receptive to African American people, period. Um, you definitely could be more receptive in a lot of these houses. And we battle a lot of the same things that are being battled here in the United States. Colorism, racism, the so
Right.
like
No, I agree. Definitely. Let's speaking of that, let's talk about family. You having family and being in this practice. How did your family react to you initiating?
so pretty much everyone but my mother was
Hmm.
cool. Like my grandmother told me, go do continue doing what you're doing because it's obvious that you're gonna bring something back, or you're doing something for this family's legacy or what have you. She was okay with it. But bear in mind, my grandmother's Pentecostal. Okay. My mother basically, she thought I was on a one-way ticket to hell. Still
Yeah.
does to this day. And everybody else, like, just if they don't understand it, they ask. Once they know, they're like, okay, cool, live it. You know. But there was some definite opposition from like, other friends of mine who I didn't know were like devout Christians, but they were also queer, and they literally were like, no, that's witchcraft. I'm gonna leave you be.
Hmm.
Bear in mind, they speak in tongues and rub oil on the post and lintel of their door.
That. That part.
Y'all praying over a bottle of Pompeian olive oil, but I can't.
Amy said, my parents, Southern Baptists, were devastated and think I've been stolen by the devil. Yeah. And that's another important why I want to talk about family because that is seems to be the biggest issue too with and not just with African Americans but just across the board, coming out of like our traditional most often Christian or some form of Christian background and then going into these very indigenous practice that is like they don't know it's ceremony, it's drummings, it's spirit possession, it's which when you really kind of look at it, what we do in worship is really no different than what we do in church, you
I
know.
mean, if you've been to a Pentecostal or holiness church, you have seen people running
Yeah, a
around.
Kojic church. My mother grew up and I grew up in a Kojic church. A very like, and the history of the Kojic church. You know what that's about, So, you know,
Bishop Mason was more than a bishop, ladies. That's just
Oh, okay. Let me see. There's some good questions. So, yeah, a lot of people are speaking. My god sister Faith. Hey, Faith. She said, yeah, you had a hard time with your family. Your Baptist family shunned. Sorry, I'm over here trying to look through comments. Because it was a good question. Did you maintain a fear of hell moving? That's a really good question. Did you maintain a fear of hell moving through Buddhism and into Ocha? No, that's a really good question. I did not. And I'm actually very appreciative that I started with the Buddhism because the Buddhism is what helped to really decolonize a lot of my religious and spiritual mindset as I got into, and then as it segued with me getting into Lucumi. But I'm gonna tell y'all something. This might be TMI, but a lot of my decolonization around religion started when I like years like college when I was going through my whole journey with my sexuality because a lot of people don't know I'm not straight. I identify as queer, and so there was a lot of having to deconstruct that as I was going through my sexual journey in my college years. So that also helped a lot with that too. you know. Um So by the time I got into Buddhism, and then by the time I transitioned into Ocha, like that had already sorted itself out. But that's a really good question.
Yo, what
Um,
sealed the deal for me in hell, in not fearing hell, was like college. You you take a course or two, and you find out that all of that like that it was a tool to encourage fear, to inspire fear.
mm,
Nah, nah, I'm okay.
absolutely.
I deconstructed.
Yeah, yeah, that happens, and that goes into you know how, like, because I was going to speak on that too and bring that up as a topic, how important it is to deconstruct and decolonize that, because I do notice that a lot of African Americans go into ATRs with that still kind of Christian, mindset, and it's almost like evangelical Christian mindset, and it doesn't mesh well. It doesn't mesh well because it's so opposite. It's so different. So thank you, Xavier. I see a lot of you on this live. But no, that is also something that is a topic of discussion, because I see it a lot. I see it a lot in how, people interact with each other within the Lucumi spaces. I honestly see it a lot on social media. Some of the stands, some of the things that some of these practitioners say, and it's like, yeah, you haven't deconstructed that. You haven't decolonized that. Even down to how people, interpret Odus and how they, or what they assume, Orisha to be. And it's just, there's still a lot of that Christian kind of mindset going on. Um, oh, even the entitlement that some are annoyed by. It's very, the last shall be first. Yeah. So let me see. Let me get back to our topics. So I guess we kind of touched on this a little bit. But I do want to ask, because this comes up a lot as well. Do you feel like you practicing Lukumi was a conflict within of your family traditions? Like, did you feel it was a conflict at all, or went against your family traditions?
No, no, because to be honest with you, the very first reading that I got literally spoke to me bringing something back, me bringing this back to my family, and that the work that I'm doing spiritually was going to help my family, whether they were believers or not. And what really sort of like came, the full circle moment was when I was sitting in Ita and they mentioned my younger brother
Hmm.
and telling me that, of course, like I would have to go visit him. That because and they cited right then, at the time, at the moment he's incarcerated, but you're gonna have to go visit him, or you're gonna have to like see him when he gets out and spend a little time with him. I didn't know what it was for. It didn't come full circle until like maybe 2 years ago. Until like that's when I saw my brother again and was like, oh, this is why they want me to see him. So it literally sent me back to touch those things and bring those things closer to me. So like if anything, it helped me with a lot of my church hurt, a lot of the church traumas, because
Mm,
now the church is a place that I go to do certain things.
yes, yes.
That's what the church serves for me. If I need to go to a service because like my ancestors moved me to do so, I'll do that. But on the
Mhm.
regular, nah.
Yeah. It's funny you say that too, because, that's similar for me as well. And I actually kind of joke that, becoming a witch, a root worker has made me a better Christian. Like I actually understand its place. Okay, baby. To ask daddy. Okay. Yo, I'm about to lock this door. Hold on. This boy bust in here one more time.
Listen,
And
that
I
baby
know
said,
he
"I'm good."
gonna get mad when he try to come in
He was
and
like,
pull his
I
lock.
just want to get the tea. He just wants the tea. He just wants the tea. He wants to know what is mommy talking about."
Oh my goodness. But no, like and so for me, because a lot of my hoodoo practice is rooted in the Kojic church and prayer and things like that. And I have a lot of spirits with me that are Catholic spirits. So every so often they'll ask me to go to right. I'm gonna need his ass to go to bed. But a lot of my I have some Catholic spirit guides, and so every so often they'll ask me to go to mass, Catholic mass. Um or every so often my spirits will want me to go to church, and there's a Kojic church in Atlanta that I go to. But it's more so like when my spirits or my ancestors move me to, it's not like a regular thing, because a lot of my worship is in my home, it's in my space, but I understand its place now. Like when I was younger, I didn't understand its place. Like I was really kind of removed from it. But now that I have just an expanded spirituality in general, and I'm more rooted in who I am and who my ancestors are, I have a better understanding of its placement. Um, and so for me, there's no conflict. And I also bring that up because there's this assumption that when you are a Lucumi practitioner, especially if you're African American, that because it's so far removed and it's not like the original, from the motherland Ishe practice, that then you're having to sacrifice or give up your family traditions. And that is not the case at all. As a matter of fact, I know there's a lot of us that have itas that tell us, like, no, you are never to give up your traditions. you know?
Right. And then there are those who have, particular Odu that speak to them not being a part of a closed religion, or them not, focusing on more than one thing, that OSHA is really their focus. And that again is a destiny thing. And that's what I love about ATRs and just a lot of faiths in general, is that there's this sort of let this journey be set up to fit you and what you live. Um,
Mm,
Literally, when I did OSHA, they told me receive everything, take in everything, because spirit is spirit, babe. You need spirit, period.
right.
So
Right.
I took that as to, just to basically continue seeking after it, you know.
Yeah, hold on. Live is making me okay. Good, because they were talking about there was every so often live will make you do something with the puzzle and to make sure you whatever. They were like, you're gonna end the live if you don't play this puzzle. But no. And side note, this is how much y'all see that I do not go live because I still don't even know how to work this. But no, that's a valid point, and I love how there's so many people in the comments that are sharing their stories about just this disconnect of Christianity, you know, putting it in the place where it belongs,
Mhm.
because Amy made a good point. They were like, I hate listening to the old hymns, but the ancestors want what they want, right? Sometimes I be listening to those old gospels, and I'm like, this shit's depressing. Like, it's like, I know these are the songs that the slaves were singing because they was wanting freedom. Like, it feels like that kind of music,
No,
but
like I remember them old hymns, like when death come creeping in the room, like that.
Like my Bertha, she hates Wade in the Water. She hates. No. It's Wade in the Water or Amazing Grace. I think it's Amazing Grace she hates. Like if you sing that in a misa, she will come down mad.
You know, I, knowing the history of Amazing Grace, I'm not mad at her
She's
though.
like, I hate that song. If you want her, she'll come and she'll come mad. If you want to bring her down, sing Amazing Grace. But no. So with that being said, did you have? So it seems like you didn't have to reconcile the Christianity because you had already worked through that, right? As you came into the practice, or
Yeah, the only thing that I had to reconcile was just like leftover hurt and traumas from the church.
Mhm.
And that came full circle because like they told me anytime, the day is gonna come when you're gonna feel, encouraged to go to church. You're not going necessarily for faith. You're going because something's gonna happen for you there. And
Right.
I and when it happened, I listened to it. And I ended up healing a particular bit of hurt from my childhood.
Hmm.
Like literally, like my mother ran to these people in the church and told them that I was a devil worshiper, and this, that, and the third. And I got a chance to literally tell people in their faces, like, if you believe part of it, believe all of it. But I'm going to tell you what she left out, because if she has right to lie, I have right to correct it. And I told them, I said, you have no clue what my mother's in, and gave them the rundown. And all of a sudden, like the weight of the world lifted off me. I got in my car, left church service before it even ended, and I was driving down the road literally in tears, but not out of sadness, but out of liberation because I was done. I was like, okay, now we can keep living.
Right. And
Like,
the one thing that I love about this practice is that it's very like I always make this statement like I get my spirits, my God lives in my home. I'm interacting with God directly in my home, you know what I mean? Or I get to interact directly with these energies and these essences. There is no you know going into a random building and then speaking through a third party. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
and so it's very direct. It's very, it's a very visceral type of practice. Like you feel it. There's no doubt, never a doubt. And that's what I love, about this. And so,
And what I what most like one of my favorite things to share with people is that like in the Odu 8-8 Baba Yobe, right? The first thing that we learn as human beings is to love Ori, which is self when you get down to it. So before you can love the divine, before you can love Olodumare, before you can love Oshun and all of these other essences, you have to love self first. And I think that that's something that is kind of waning in the church
mm,
because they teach that you have to be self-sacrificial. God blesses the cheerful giver. And that basically you're supposed to turn the other cheek and just let people do this and do that. And that there's no real accountability there. Wherein, and they tell you that it's selfish to think of self first. But literally, like the eldest Odu literally tells us, no, 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 think about you first, because you got to love the life that you were given first before you can love the divine, because you are divine.
mm-hmm,
And
absolutely.
people forget that some of the orishas that we adore are deified ancestors.
That that.
So come on.
That. So, well, as far as traditions and practices and things, since we're on that topic, are you a practitioner initiating any other traditions other than Lukumi?
Yes, I'm initiated Scratch and Apollo. Um I've got initiations in Haitian Voodoo and also in the 21 divisions. Oh, gotta think of them, man. Of course, I'm also now getting my feet wet with hoodoo and conjure work and all of that. Shouts out to you for encouraging me there. Um, and of course, and of course, I do still have a very like deep worship for Mahalakshmi and Lord Ganesh. Um,
Hmm.
and of course, you can't have one without the other. I literally celebrate Diwali. I do the lamps. I do all of it. So,
Yes. So, how do you manage multiple practices? Let's talk about that.
well, I think the divine is big enough for us to, in some ways, keep things separate. You know what I mean? Like there is such a thing as like I guess compartmentalizing these things so that we don't cross lines. I just make sure to understand that they're separate understandings, right? Same thing when it comes to like people talking about Espiritismo and Osha. Espiritismo is a separate thing from
Hmm.
Orisha worship. Do they ever hint at each other? Maybe, yeah, a little bit, but they don't cross those lines. Espiritismo is Espiritismo, Osha is Osha. So this understanding that you have to have a misa, a spiritual mass before you initiate, there's no requisite for that because if you're not a spiritist, let's say that you didn't come here to be necessarily that type of ancestor for that type of ancestral worship. There are other ways to accomplish it. Mayubona, who is born and bred in Cuba, she's in her 80s in life and she's in her 60s in Osha. She is of Oyo and Ijesa blood. Like the people that she descended from weren't creolized. So she never developed an understanding of Espiritismo.
Hmm.
Her understanding is Egun in the corner. That's it. And that's all she wants to hear about it. So,
Right.
and and I share that because like she's in Cuba and I want people to understand that like not everybody does the same thing.
Hmm. Right. Right. Yeah, and I bring that up. I wanted to ask this because, again, there's this assumption that as African American practitioners, we have to forsake our other practices and our other traditions. And it's like that is totally not the case. That's not in your instance, obviously. Definitely not in mine. You know, similar. I am also scratched and Palo. I am a hoodoo. You know, that is my, my biggest thing. I do, I do have some things with Haitian voodoo. Um, and I am also in a spiritista, as well. And so again, it is that thing where I practice, and then of course the devotee of Kali Ma. But that's separate. But I also do kind of incorporate that a little bit with my spiritismo.
Yeah.
So I'm able to
And
kind
I
of
forgot to mention that I am also an espiritista and a guru.
right. So it's a lot of and so and so with all of that, it's like, it is a lot of work to keep everything separate, but also like practice and honor everything. But in no way does one require me to forsake another, right?
Mhm.
Now, there may be situations where the spirits might feel left out, or it's like, oh, I haven't tended to one in a while, but never has it come up in any reading in any of my practices where it's saying you have to forsake one for, opposed to another. Now, what does come up sometimes is that there may be more of a leaning into a certain practice more than others, but not, like for example, yes, I'm scratched and Palo, but that was medicine that I needed. And
Hmm.
it wasn't anything that came up that said I had to go further in that, other than that initial thing that I needed for myself, Um,
That's not to say that you won't go deeper in the future.
and that
Mhm.
right, that's true. Because I love me some Paulo, but I mean, but it was never. And I want to say that too because there's also this misconception that people say that once you get initiated in Lucumi that you can't do Paulo, and it's like, and I don't want to get into too deep of a conversation about Paulo because I know it's a public platform and we don't want to talk too much about that, but I do want to dispel that myth. That people feel like, if people have said I've gotten a reading from a Babalao or whatever, and they told me I can't do Paulo. And it's like, that's not necessarily how that works. One is not going to dictate the other. Now, you may have certain taboos. It may come up in a reading that you can't do throw curses, you can't do left hand work. So they may limit what you can do in other practices, but that doesn't mean you can't worship or be a part of those practices. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because a lot of people forget that like Palo is more Congolese Angolan worship. So it's a separate thing altogether. It's a different language and different songs, different essences that you're talking about. So, it's important, like it says in, I think it's in Obarabobe, one thing has nothing to do with the other.
Mm-hmm.
It's important that we keep that understanding that like those essences are separate and to be handled and approached differently. Because once you start confusing things, you run the risk of offending these essences. And there are
That
some
part.
essences, and I don't want them problems. I don't know about.
Right. Right. And so yeah, now I see I got told because my father is Obamore I shouldn't do Paulo. Michael, do you want to speak to that? I think you would have way more of a understanding of why that would come up than me.
So, like, I think that that's just somebody's personal understanding.
Right, because I
There's
see right underneath he said not by my Baba Toby. David was like, that's BS.
right. I was trying my best to put it as nicely as I could, but there are a lot of people that like to place these things on these essences. Obamoro has nothing to do with Palo.
Mm,
Obamoro is is a discussion in and of himself. Like the path of Obatala that came to take on the woes of man. Like the path of Obatala that decided to be everything to those who are differently able. So like in what world would he be concerned with that?
Mm,
Like, don't get me wrong, they're just along the Niger River up the street, but they're different cultures. Just like people forget that like the Yoruba and the people of Benin have been commingling for thousands of years,
right.
but they have separate cultures, separate languages. And the Yoruba speaking people in that country are called Anago. So like they draw the distinction even in their own homeland. So it's just like I think that we need to be okay with drawing these lines that say, okay, let's not lead with that because Obamoro, Obamoro is a beautiful. Obamoro is my Obatala, by the way.
That's my Batula too. Yes.
Obama, Obamoro is a seer. He's a dreamer. He's like he was known for having sight. I did a deep dive on the history of Obamoro, found the town where he was from and all of that stuff, which I'll get with you later, Jack, on that. I'll give you the tea because we'll be here a while if I keep talking. But but no, to suffice it to say, you can dispel that. That is a myth. Because if that were the case, I know quite a few people who wouldn't be scratched by Legos. Okay?
That part.
I know children of Obamoro, people who are crowned to Obamoro that are scratching Impala. I have pops.
Right. And I will say, I'm gonna talk about this because that's gonna be the last thing that I bring up that we discuss. Is there's a certain level of anti-blackness in regards to Paulo. Paulo gets a lot of is demonized in a lot of the same ways that Haitian voodoo is.
Uh-huh.
So that's but we're gonna talk about that anti-blackness. We're gonna end the live with that. We're gonna go out with that conversation.
Okay. Do it big at the end, baby.
So let me go through. Okay, so I know we talked about. Okay, I want to talk about history, right? And you're more of the historian of Lucumi than I am, So let give us a little brief about like how did Lucumi make its way to the U.S. and who, if you know who were some of the first African American initiates of Lucumi.
Oh, good gracious. It's been a long time since I've looked into that bit of history, but of course, we know clearly that there were Cuban people who were who were immigrating to the United States, as far back as like, the 40s, 50s and the like. Um, and a lot of them for quite a while were kind of, they kept to themselves and then eventually like they got moving. I believe Oh, I can't remember the first African American that was ever initiated into the Lucumi tradition, but I know that John Mason was one of them, one of the first
Because a
initiated
lot
into
of
our
people
tradition.
don't know John Mason is African American.
Yeah, John Mason is African American, and Baba John is a sweetheart. I've met him. Matter of fact, he came to Tampa when he was doing some research for a book concerning the elders, the Lagbas in Tampa. And a friend of mine put me in contact with him because he wanted to ask questions, and I happen to know a good bit about the Lagbas in Tampa. And it was a really dope conversation. And definitely, I will say that a lot of people recognize, a lot of African Americans definitely gravitate towards him. There are a lot of people in the tradition that do recognize John Mason now, but John Mason didn't always get his just due. Um, because I had to be told about John Mason. Like you
Mm,
didn't just hear it in conversation, but he wrote some of the most comprehensive writings on our tradition. And what
yes.
I love is that he sort of came two-handed. He focused on the diasporic aspect of it, the differences there, but he also wrote things in traditional Yoruba so that you could see where they came from, you know. So like he's like people like John Mason. Back in the day, you had folks like Mama Keke. You had, and matter of fact, let's not forget Iya Ama McKen, Kwesi Mayadan. She was an amazing singer, still living, walking around this earth, killing it, you know. So like we have been sort of embedded. The one who was known for doing African American heads was Masunta. Um, oh my gosh, Osaunko. Osaunco. Masunta was one of the first people to really like welcome African American heads into her house, and she did a slew. You know, so she did a lot of people. Some of the people that some of the people that moved to the Oyotunji village in South Carolina were originally initiated by my Sunta.
Okay.
So
Okay.
like yeah, like I say all that to say that like we weren't necessarily at the very beginning of the tradition, no, but we have become a part of the fabric of the history, and we've been initiates long enough in this tradition for people to recognize us as part of it,
Right.
um, and to welcome us in because we're seekers of faith just the same, you know. Um, I was taught growing up you should never interface without seeking something for yourself. You should never engage in faith just because. So all of us have needs. All of us, you know, especially being black in this country, you need something to ground you in this world.
Right.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like African Americans have been a part of the fabric. There's a an African American woman who has Oba done for greater than 40 years on the West Coast.
Mm.
You know, and that's something to say. And she was crowned to Oba direct. So
Which is another conversation.
another conversation altogether. But I just love the fact that we have been here and we are contributing. And that was one of my that was one of the things that I didn't see myself doing at first until Yemaya confirmed it in her drumming. She literally told me, continue to think the way you do, continue to learn the way you do. We put you here for a reason.
Right.
And you know, and I think that like being there for my own godchildren who are predominantly African American has definitely felt like sort of paying it forward, you know, because I want to give to them what I got and
Right.
even more because I don't ever want them to have a moment where they don't feel like they belong, you know. And that's it, you know. And I will always be here for Black people. I will always be here for women and their treatment in this tradition as well. That's another discussion.
Oh yes, and and segueing though with that too is how, as far as African American representation in Lucumi in the tradition, how do you feel about that? Is Are we well represented? Do we need to be more represented? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think that representation has greatly improved in the years that I've been initiated to, you know, to speak from that. I've definitely seen an increase in, you know, African American heads that are standing up. There's a long-standing house in Chicago, I believe is it Ile almost Ikang or something to that effect. And it's run by this one lady who has a Liguada,
Hmm.
and her and the people in that Ile are predominantly African American. There, of course, are other people from other backgrounds, but there's sort of a predominance there, and they're respected. So like that's definitely changed. Do we still have room to grow? Absolutely, because representation definitely needs to be beefed up. And right now, one of the things that I am focused on is definitely making sure that I position myself as a part of that representation,
Hmm.
so that people can know that I'm here and I exist, and you can exist in here too. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah. So where do you think the representation can improve? Is it like Elays? Is it eldership? Is it
I
like
definitely want to see more African Americans taking positions of leadership in their religious houses. You know, definitely seeing them push forward to make more noise in the tradition, if you will, as my elders put it. I definitely want to see them. I want to see more. I want to see more African Americans as zodiac aides.
mm,
You know, active functioning priests in the tradition because we do exist. We do. You
hmm,
know, I've been singing the sacrifice since I was what, 2?
right, right.
one, 2 years crowned and I was singing the sacrifices. So like, you know, I think it's possible for us to keep growing the way we are. And you are proof of that.
Yeah.
Because no, you no, and that's real talk because you truly have stepped up into a position of leadership and you stand out in front so that others can know that you are here and that they're also welcome here,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know.
that I credit, my crown, my mother, my God for that, because that was one of the first lessons that she taught me when I was in ELO was take up space.
No,
Take
and
up
to answer your
space.
question, Danny, no, I'm not a nobody out there. I'm not. I just know a lot.
But yeah, and it's and I'm for me to be as young, and that's and for those who've been on the live since the beginning, and I talked about how um I was kind of like running away, or just trying to like not commit to crowning. I knew what was going to happen. I knew that it was going to be me stepping into leadership, and me. I mean, I was already almost pretty much running my elder's house out here, just helping with ceremonies and coordinating things when he comes and visits. So there was a lot of that I was already doing before I even crowned. And then I get in my Ita. My Ita is like, you're gonna do a lot of ceremonies. You're gonna have a large house of your own, and then, it wasn't too long into my years that I had started getting godchildren. And so, I knew what was gonna come, which is why I was avoiding it. But 5 years in now, I'm embracing more of like that role,
Yeah.
and me being one of a legacy for my own elder, and
Hmm.
for our lineage, and so, and what all that comes with.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I ran from it for a while. For a while, I was
Same
not
here.
trying to. I
Same
was
here, baby.
not trying
Baby, I was tiptoeing real quiet, you know.
to.
And I decided, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna focus on me and my growth of the tradition. I'm just gonna do my thing, learn what I need to learn. I'm not ready yet. And I turned
Mm,
like what 3 in OSHA, and that's when stuff started moving. And I ended up with godchildren. And and at first I was kind of taken aback because I was like, "You want me? Like, no, but 3." But they're like, and then I went to my elders and talked to them about it, but they were like, "Yeah, um, you can absolutely go for it with it." And they literally said, had it been someone else without having who hasn't demonstrated sort of the competencies that you
mm.
have a handle on things in a way that allows you to tend to people. So we send people to you at times to tend to them for us. So why not? I was like, okay, you're right. And I have it anytime that I'm gonna birth heads. I'm gonna do all of these things. I'm gonna build a tent. I'm gonna build my own house. It's gonna be, I ain't ready for a lot of that right this moment, but but I am receptive to tending to other people because the more I did it, the more I realized how important it is and how necessary it is. Because if I had not had those conversations with certain godchildren of mine, they would have given up
Mm.
because they've been places that made them feel like the odd man out for being either queer or black or both. And it's just like, I think part of what we're supposed to do is to be that balm of healing in a sense, to help these people, sort of deconstruct where they've been and to focus on where they are now and give them a little bit of hope for the future,
Right.
and just it took a moment for me to adjust to it, but eventually I came to accept it.
Right.
And I think that it didn't come clear until I gave my first set of electeds and warriors and my first Olokun. I think
Mm.
Olokun was what sealed the deal. I was like, because I gave my first set of electeds and my first Olokun at the same time.
Wow. So yeah, no, that you was like, oh, well, this is real now. Like this is what I'm doing. Like this
Yeah.
is right, right. And I think a lot of it too is remembering or just embracing or accepting that like we have a place in this too. Like
Hmm.
for a while I kind of was like stepping back and was like, okay, I'm just gonna work things behind the scenes, and but Arisha was like, nah, like this is yours too. And so, and I think that's a big part of it. Like, and I don't know if it's just like a personal thing, like as individuals we struggle with that, like having a place, or if it's a little bit more exaggerated with just African Americans, because it's like, you know, our history is that we only have a place when it's convenient for people, when we're performing labor for people or
Or when
contributing
we
or
serve. or
You
we
know,
serve a
like
purpose. There's power in numbers, and but I definitely agree with you there because like it literally is just as Black people in America, we've dealt with so much of that not feeling welcome, and you see it in the history, see it in the things that were done to us, that we've more often than not been told you're not welcome here.
hmm
So when we then walk into an ATR and we get that vibe, we feel this energy like we're outside and they're inside, and we just hating outside the club, then you never get to actually enjoy that journey. And a promise that I made to myself was that I would never let my godchildren ever feel like that,
Same.
because especially like because not only do we deal with racism but we also and colorism and whatnot, but we also deal with homophobia and transphobia and all of these things
hmm
in this tradition. And I promised myself that I would never be one to perpetuate more of that, because I think that part of our responsibilities as priests in this tradition is to also unlearn and basically get rid of the the toxicities that maybe some of us have endured. Like we
mm
can't keep repeating the same toxicity and passing this on to our to passing on this understanding that to be a part of this tradition is to be blindly subservient and abused. No.
mm Absolutely. Absolutely. Because too often we deal with, being in situations where people want our money, our resources, our labor, our energy, our magic, but they don't want us. you know, and there's a lot of trauma behind that sometimes we do come into these spaces and we bring that trauma in, and then it makes us defensive, you
Yeah.
know. Um
And then there are of course Black folks that have had run-ins with brown people, with Latin people, Latinx people who were colorist, racist, or what have you, and shunned them all the same.
Exactly. And let's
So
talk
when they
about that. That's the perfect segue into what I want to address, which is me, I'm going to always talk about the elephant in the room, Let's talk about the anti-blackness in Lucumi. Because I'm not about to, I love my faith, I love my practice, but we're not going to sit here and act like it doesn't exist. Like it's not there
Mhm.
in certain situations. So let's talk about that. Like, I've seen it exist. Do you feel like it exists within the practice? And if so, like, have you experienced it?
um, it does exist. I will definitely, admit to it existing. I have not had it happen to me necessarily, but I have seen others experience it right before my eyes. Like I've been in circles where, like, I've been to drummings and stuff like that in other people's houses, and you hear the conversations going
Mm,
on in Spanish about other Black people present, right? And what's worse is I understand Spanish, so I catch everything, and it takes everything in me not to say something because I don't want to ruin nobody's event. But yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it. Like matter of fact, I had a lady literally tell me that she loved my European features in terms of my nose. She's like, your nose is so thin. And da, 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 da. I was like, have you seen East African people? That's what I wanted to say. But she was an old lady, and you can't change somebody that's hardwired to believe the way that they do.
right, right,
And I often say that I'm not in the business of convincing anybody that sense should be common. So I walked off, I let it be. But I've never like necessarily experienced like direct, moments of anti-blackness, but I've seen it.
right.
I've seen it clearly, and I've heard it. And matter
Mm.
of fact, some of those Latinos for Trump down in South Florida and whatnot were practitioners.
And it's funny because someone said, I have heard about those comments. I've heard those comments about me when I dance at drummings. I will agree with you, Michael. I've had the same exact thing. I have not experienced it directly. Um, which is interesting. And I will say this, I actually don't really experience, it's been a very long time since I've experienced just overt anti-blackness or racism directly to my face, you know.
Mhm.
um so but I have seen it, I've witnessed it in towards others, or just subtle things.
I mean,
But
and witnessing it is traumatic, and then also dealing with sort of I guess you could call it office politics, if you will.
that part now. So, Jack said, I think being forced to witness is pretty damn direct. But I would tell you this, what's interesting about it, the type of anti blackness that I have kind of like, I've had microaggressions with, have not been from, it has been from Afro Latinos. It's been from Afro Latinos. Black Cubans, Panamanians,
Hmm.
Black Dominicans.
Oh yeah, the colorism struggle is real in these
Yes.
streets.
Right. So Chris
But
said, which is crazy. That's been, and it's been like just a belittling of African American spirituality. That's been that, which I still consider anti-blackness. That's anti-blackness. Am I?
yeah, and it's the same when people assume that everybody African American in the tradition is just going to take what they want from the tradition and do what the hell they want because of what they've seen in locales like Atlanta, South Carolina, and blah blah blah. And there are a lot of people in the tradition that have this assumption that we just want you to teach us real quick and then we're going to run and make it up as we go. And that's not necessarily the case. There are those of us who just want to grow in this tradition, learn it the way it was practiced, learn how to keep that going. The only thing that I'm trying to do that would be different is just deconstructing from all of the different you know things like colorism, homophobia, transphobia, all of these different things, the
Right.
misogyny and all of that. I'm trying to deconstruct all of that, get that out of my
Yeah. And I will say that, it's interesting that so for first and foremost, I will say I have not experienced any anti-blackness or any of that in my own Elay. My Elay, is not like it is, my Elay. First of all, I have a bunch of very radical, like like a lot of my god siblings are like like one's like a elected official. Others are like, they work like political, like, what is the word? They do a lot of social activists. A lot of my god siblings are activists,
way.
so they're very radical, very political, very, there's that. And even though my Elay is predominantly, Latino, there's a handful of us that are African American. Um, like I have not experienced, the anti-blackness. I have seen my god siblings experience the transphobia and the homophobia. That's a bigger issue that I've witnessed, and again, particularly going in other houses. Now, I've been to events with other houses. I've worked a couple of stuff with other houses, and again, I've not experienced the anti-blackness with other houses. But then there's misogyny, like for example, I have one god sibling who's trans, and they were talking about an experience being at a ceremony where the baba didn't know that he was trans, and he was making misogynistic comments about women to my trans god sibling, not knowing that my god sibling was trans. So there's more things like that I see. But not to say that the anti-blackness is not there. I mean, the gender and the like LGBT, that's a whole other live we can do.
No, like
That's
I
a whole
remember
other live.
I remember when I was like maybe two in OSHA, and I was on Facebook hard and heavy at the time, and that was back when I was a bit of a battle cat. I would go back and forth with people on the internet in a minute. But there was this one situation where there was a group of Babalawos down in Miami that were white Cubans that literally said that the African contributed nothing to the
Mm,
Lucumi tradition. when it was the African that built it. And literally, I put up a status about it, like, woo, 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 I don't, this is not cool, et cetera, and so forth. I'm paraphrasing, of course. And the next thing I know, I had somebody literally in my comments trying to challenge what I said, like, oh, how dare you? Da, 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 da. I was like, I have right to criticize, to critique the things that are going on in my faith. You know,
Absolutely.
like I'm a
Absolutely.
part of this.
Right.
So, and if I'm not holding people accountable, then who is?
Right. Even down to like, my elder, we have, and I love my elder, like I, have so much love and respect for my elder. But of course, as two different people, we sometimes have difference of opinions when it comes to how to handle things. And, there is a cultural difference between with black folks and like other cultures because me and my guy sibling, Omi, we joke about this. Like black folks, like the way we handle conflict is conflict. Like the way like we gonna call something out, we gonna say some shit, we go whatever. Like black folk, that's how we handle conflict. Other cultures are not like that, and so and so me and my elder, we have a slightly different take on that because my elder, he is very he's first of all crown Abatala, so very much about like the keep the peace, like
Not very non-confrontational,
very
trying to
non-confrontational, like let the Rishas handle them, and and I'm all about like let me pull up and smack a bitch. You know what I mean?
trust me.
Like,
I
and the
know.
elder is like, no, you're a
Oh,
priest,
meal.
like you can't be, no, Toy, you can't do that, and so but and so it's funny, like our differences of like how we handle things, conflicts and stuff. But my point with that is that my experience, like the way I handle things is has to be different because as a black woman, there's certain things that I deal with when it comes to people challenging my leadership, people, assuming I don't know what I'm talking about, people want to try me. Like it's just a thing that happens with black women. You know what I'm saying? People coming for me, people, throwing me into like just it's just this thing that happens because of me just being a black woman that my elder, he is, a Hispanic male, and him just being a man, he doesn't have to deal with, so there are, so even with that, like, culturally, there's that difference. And then just me being a woman, that's a whole other conversation, being a woman in this tradition, So, those are kind of the conversations that we have. I'm like, like, I was like, I want to fight. And he's like, well, you can't,
Right, I
And
get
I,
it. I
I
get
make
it.
jokes about it, but there's certain things he's just like, we'll let it go. And I'm like, but it's a different implication as a black woman for me to let something go versus him being a Hispanic male, a Latino male. Sometimes I cannot afford to let certain things go, certain things slide versus him. That's just my, how I feel, with just my
Mhm.
experience. So Shaq was like, I'd be like, but why?
Right? No, like, and the thing of it is that like when you've been wronged, when you've been ignored and dismissed, you just want you want to rectify some things, and that's all. So, like, I sometimes need that get back, but you know, it's like I said, she's working on me.
Right. But again, I give my elder credit because,
Yeah,
him being under his guidance and his mentorship, I've grown a lot. Like I've grown a whole lot,
yeah,
So, I give him, and there are some instances where he'll be like, Toy, you tripping. I'm like, you know what, you right. You right. Let me have a seat, So
it
but
gets like that sometimes. By the
it'd be
way,
like
hey,
exactly.
Brenton, Santo, what
So, but
happened?
those are just certain things, when we get into the conversations of just the anti-blackness and, even the misogyny, the misogynoir, like all of that is a factor of things that we experience. And that's something else. I've been in ceremonies where not in my house, but I've seen ceremonies in other houses where the women in leadership are ran over by the men in the room, you know, and that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah,
Whole other
and I
conversation.
always try to reiterate to people, it was women that founded this. Let us be clear.
Right.
It was women that founded this. When y'all start talking about Esu Shewari Goldo, Mamo Sarato Batero, Yamagarita Almentero Sainayobi, all these different these women literally literally preserved all that we know in this tradition. So yeah, and I think that we have an opportunity at this point to go further, and I'm grateful for this conversation, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me too. Like, and I see that we had a lot of people tuning in. We got a lot of comments. Like, a lot of people were like, "Thank you for this." Like, like so my last, as we well, actually, I want to ask you real quick, how do you respond to instances of anti-blackness, you know in that you observe, within these Lucumi spaces? Because I think that is an important thing for people to have advice about how to handle those situations.
So there have been situations where like I've spoken to like other people that I know in the tradition, and we'll be in conversation, and then they'll say something, and in that moment I address it. Like
Mm,
if we're in conversation and they say something anti-black, be it directed at me or no, I always correct and let them know, hey, you can't, because anybody else would have came and wailed on your face. You understand? Like anybody else would have busted you in your face. So like I need you to not do that, because no. Like I've spoken to it, and I also make sure that I don't participate in it.
right.
Like I make sure that I don't continue to perpetuate the anti-blackness, which is why that I decolonize a lot of my conversations around Odu, because because I've heard some doozies.
Mm,
I've heard people be told that they couldn't date dark skinned men.
right.
What, but and then of course the greater question for me is, why would that be the case when everybody in Nigeria is black?
Right. It's right. Why are you interpreting that? Oh, do that to mean that.
Right. And I want people to understand that, like, though the years of OSHA you have are counted, they're not the only marker of eldership.
Right.
Eldership is also demonstrating, certain things. Like being a representative of this faith means that we're here to encourage people to faith, right? We're here to encourage them along a journey. And people forget that that's our primary goal. And if we're not doing that, we're not really serving spirit. We're not serving ourselves in that moment.
Yeah.
You do a
Exactly.
disservice to this tradition, and that's why. And I've heard the stories and the issues with being black in this tradition, and I'm grateful. That's why I say I'm grateful for this conversation, because I'm glad that some of the people are in this live right now,
Yeah, me
getting
too.
answers,
Yeah.
because people need to see that we exist, and that we are here. Like I don't have a specification of what race you need to be to initiate with me, but I am definitely here for making sure that black people know they belong.
Right. Right. Exactly. No, in the same thing for me, if I see it, if I I address it. But also too, me and you a little fiery. We, like I said, we're the type to, we're gonna call out the elephant in the room. Like, you're Sag, I'm a Leo, like we go. But
It's gonna be
it doesn't even have to be in a confrontational way, or it could be just an easy pulling someone aside and say, hey, I
hey,
know
this is
I noticed this isn't cool. Um, I've had to have those conversations when I've had God family misgender another God family. Just, it works across the board,
mhm.
with any type of situation that you're having to address, like, that's sensitive of nature, but that also can't go be ignored either. Like, things like that can't just fly under the radar. They have to be brought
Yeah.
to, attention,
And the thing is that you can't choose who comes to your door. You
that
get what I'm
part.
saying?
That
And
part.
and the thing is that like when they come to your door seeking help, to deny them is just atrocious to me.
Right.
You get what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, no, 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 no. You can't. You don't get to pick and choose like no, like I literally have spent my entire existence in this tradition trying to make sure that that gets dispelled because no.
Right.
That's why you and I had the conversations when you were concerned when you were scared of leadership and you thought that you couldn't. I was like, no, you belong here. You're supposed to be doing this.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
no,
yeah.
no, you're supposed to be here. You deserve to be here. Like I got chills talking about that, but
Mhm. Yeah, I mean it was a lot of that in my EIO year, and then like going into the second, I didn't really start getting comfortable until about my fourth and fifth year. But also in my defense, I was also pregnant during my year, and it was just a lot of it was
oh
a
like
lot of emotions, you know. I might do just one live just talking about my year. Like my year was like, pregnant, and then my father passed away, and like I was running my business. I had people throwing witchcraft at me. Like as it was like my year. My year was a lot,
yeah. And
but
I witnessed you grow. So like, listen, I'm glad to have you as a colleague, you know. Um
and that's an honor, to have like an elder such as yourself, like even, consider me like a colleague, like,
no,
that
like
that really, really says a lot. That really
oh no,
like, yeah.
you and me go together real bad. So
Yeah.
and that's just my life with children of are like children of y'all love me and I love them back. I love y'all back because yo, oh no,
Can't
no, no.
nobody talk us off the ledge like the way Child Oshun, like,
Listen,
it's like, yes.
yeah, sometimes when I know I gotta have a deep conversation, put a little honey on that tongue real quick.
Right. So before I close out, I just want to ask, do you have any advice for any African Americans that are wanting to explore this tradition or who are already in this tradition just trying to navigate it?
One, inform yourself. You cannot inform yourself enough. Okay. Definitely you have to have you have to have an irrevocable sense of self.
Hmm.
You have to have such an understanding and a grounding in who you are that no one can shake you off of that so that you understand before you walk in the door that you belong. There's not a marker on you that determines whether or not you belong in this tradition. That is divine, that is asked, that is ori. And definitely before you commit to a religious elder, get to know them. Spend a little time, talk to them on a random Tuesday, find out what they got, find out how they operate. Work an OSHA from the outside. See how they talk, see how they get along with their godchildren and how that's going. Definitely inform yourself and please walk in the door knowing that you belong
Hmm.
and that we are but a stone's throw away from being direct descendants of the people that created this tradition. So come in welcome and come in knowing and make sure that you have an elder that that definitely affirms who you are. If they don't affirm who you are, whatever identity we're talking about,
Hmm.
don't stay. You do not have to sit and suffer in silence in order to be a part of something. And just, definitely remember that like this faith, like many others, is here to help you to evolve, help you to grow you, right? And you are the first reason that you came into this tradition. The people that you meet in this tradition, you wouldn't know them unless you wouldn't know them if you had not known them through faith.
Hmm.
You don't have to be friends with everybody, baby. You can be co-workers and go back home. I know plenty olorisas that socialize when they're at the function. They go home and they have a whole set of friends that nobody knows about.
Hmm.
That's not in a tradition that they just deal with, and that's that. You don't have to be friends with everybody that you meet, but you do deserve respect. And
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
okay, and it's okay to ask for that respect too.
Hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Beautiful words, like beautiful words. I really don't have, I mean, there's really not much I can say to piggyback off that because you just hit everything on the head. Like, I know my advice would be to, as a part of your cultivation of getting to know yourself and being solid in yourself, be solid in your ancestors too. Because everything that you do is in this tradition is going to be based off of your ancestors. So, have a strong relationship, a strong connection, a strong ancestor veneration practice. um, my other advice would be don't base your relationship with the Risha off of experiences that you have with people in the tradition. You know what I mean? Like, so if you had some bad experiences, you dealt with some bad elders, some bad elays, don't let that determine whether or not you continue with getting to know and connecting with the Risha. Don't let that determine how you worship or if you worship. You know, um, don't base your decisions on whether you join the elay or whether you initiate off of race or ethnicity because all kinfolk ain't kinfolk, and so because I've seen a lot of people run to initiate and run to elays based off of the fact that the skin color is the same, and then the people in that elay or the elders they were working with dealing with did not have their best interests at heart. you know so don't just assume, like, don't come into spaces just assuming that because someone is a different ethnicity, if they're Latino, whatever, that they automatically have an issue with you, and don't assume that you go into a space and just because everybody's black that they want to help you. You know what I'm saying? So, and then that also just goes back to just making sure that you are doing this for the right reasons, that you're connecting for the right reasons, that this is really something that's in your path. Again, what Michael said, get to know the elder. Like again, it took me a year to a year and a half before I received my legays and committed to my elder and my elay. And in the meantime, when I would go to Vegas, I would go to things at his house. I would talk to him, reach out to him, and just talk to him. Hey, how you doing? Or send people to him for readings, or just different. Like, I built that relationship with my elder that continues to this day. I took my time. That's another thing. Take your time. These practices, these are gonna be here. You don't need to rush to do anything. Um, so but don't ever feel like this, if you feel like it's the right path for you, don't ever feel like you don't have a place. And don't ever let anybody else make you feel like you don't have a place in this.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And don't be afraid to step up and do things in this tradition. When you initiate, you have license to learn.
Right.
Don't be afraid to learn songs. And if your elders welcoming to you singing and learning different things, please step up because the more you touch, the more you're gonna
Right.
know. And like I just did a class on Adi just a month, just a few days ago. I did a live class on Adi with a few people real quick just to kind of do a test run. Wonderful. And they walked away knowing something. And it
Yeah.
felt good to see people walk away with this little tidbit that they're gonna pass on, you know?
Right.
So like definitely don't be afraid. Don't go the route that I did initially and let your own lack of confidence keep you from stepping up sooner. I
Right.
wish I would have known this when I was 2 and 3 years initiated. But
Mm,
now I understand that like I am here and I have right to be here and it's okay to step up.
absolutely. Absolutely. So with that being said, I know it's like 10:20. My baby is hollering in the other room.
So
he's like, get off that live. Like, what are you doing, mommy? Let's go to bed. So, thank you so much, Michael, for this. Jack made a comment about doing this, running this again with more, people on the live. I actually really like the idea of this being an ongoing conversation. Because I know there was quite a few practitioners, priests that jumped on earlier that are African American that are also initiated, and I would have loved to have them on and have them contribute to the conversation. So I'm gonna let this be an ongoing live because going back to what you said about being visible and representation, I feel like more of us need to be speaking about our experiences as African Americans in Lucumi. So I'm gonna make this an ongoing conversation.
Yes,
So
yes.
so thank you. I think TikTok will let me save this, so I'm gonna save this and then I'm gonna upload it on my YouTube. For those who are just missed some of it or want to watch it again. But thank you so much, Michael,
Thank you for
for
including me and inviting
yes, because
me.
we've been
I'm
talking about doing a
happy.
live. We've been talking about going live together for like a year.
Right. And also, I'm a rather nervous person by nature when it comes to like speaking to the public and whatnot. So like it took something for me to be here. And I'm
Oh, I
glad
know
that
you did great
no,
though.
no, no.
You did great.
And I'm just glad to be that I was able to, be a part of this.
Yes, thank you so much. And then everybody who joined on thank you so much. I appreciate y'all. Now Michael, if they need to get a hold of you, are you open? Are you available
I
for
am
what are you
I,
available for? Let's tell the people.
I'm available for messages. I'm available for phone conversations. It does not bother me. I work from home. So like I be free. Okay. So like if you want to hit me up, you got questions. Know this if you message me, it takes me a moment to get to you because I get so many messages throughout the course of a day. So like if you want something more immediate, just shoot me a message with your phone number, tell me to call you, and I will text you, let you know I'm calling you. Whatever y'all know, hit me up.
And where are
And
you
if
located?
what'd you say?
Where are you located? Just for those like who to see
So
like
right.
location wise, like yeah,
Yeah,
like
right now I'm back. Right now, as of right now, I'm back and forth between Boston and Florida. So I'm in both right now, just back and forth, setting things up nicely. So definitely either or. It doesn't matter where you are. If you just got a question or you maybe just feel like you want to talk it out because of your own experiences in the tradition, like I'm always here to listen to people, encourage you to faith, encourage you to move forward, even if you're not my godchild. So
yes, perfect. And so for those of you, I'm who are familiar or not, I'm in Atlanta. I have a botanica here called Cindy's Conjure Shop. So y'all can find me there if you are located in Atlanta. But I am also, here, and I know a few of you have started to message me, and I've been starting to get DMs. So definitely, reach out in the DMs if you would like. If you can't get a hold of me no other way, it may take me same as Michael a couple days to get back because TikTok filters some of the messages. So sometimes it goes like I'll get a message, or sometimes it'll come through as a message request, and then I miss it. So I either way I will get to you. Just give me time if you message me on TikTok. But if you're in Atlanta, you can stop by the store, Cindy's Conjure Shop. It's in Forest Park. I'm on the south side. That's where I be.
so so so
Or
Jack wants me to send you their number. So
yeah, so there or my website, which if you click the link in my bio, or my profile, the ways to contact me are in that link. So, but I'm available. I don't do Dilagoon readings because I'm not trained for that. So if anyone needs a Lukumi reading, I refer out to my elder for that. We do drummings here. We have ceremonies here, and things of that nature for Lukumi. But I also do a lot of stuff with my hoodoo and whatnot, which that's probably going to be a whole separate live. I might do a whole live talking about being a hoodoo. But
and I
again,
will be
thank you
there.
guys. Huh?
And I will be there in the audience.
Oh, Jack. Okay. Hit me up. Because I do remember that you did. I saw earlier you asked about the Kali, Ma stuff. Hit me up, DM me, or we might be friends on Facebook because I think your name does look familiar. So
I think you are friends on Facebook because I think both of y'all liked on a post of mine and I saw that we had each other in common, I think.
yeah, okay. So yeah, just hit me up on Facebook or DM me on TikTok. Because with the Kali Ma stuff, there's no reading attached to that, but there is a process that I can walk you through for that. Yeah, because your name, yeah, everything is like you're familiar. So hit me up, either DM me on TikTok or DM me on Facebook, and then we'll talk about the Kali Ma stuff for sure. Okay. But thank you all. I appreciate y'all, and everybody have a good, blessed night. Thank you, Michael. Love you so much.
Good night, Oshwambe Wao to
Good
everybody, and bendición to
night.
the elders, all right?
Absolutely.